I'm Margaret and I'm from Creature Crafts, and I'm filming this here in my shop that I opened in January this year in the little town of Myrtleford in northeast Victoria. You can find me at shop 468 Myrtle Street, Myrtleford. You can also find me online at creaturecrafts.net.au. I'm also on the socials on Facebook and Instagram under Creature Crafts Australia. So today I'm going to be showing you how to use the Pick and Mix template by Turpin Designs. And it's a great template because it's not just a template for one quilt pattern. It's a template that you can use to do lots and lots of quilt patterns. So the idea is that you pick a quilt pattern that you like and then you incorporate an applique design into that pattern. The dragonflies are done with the wedges, and then they've popped on the little woofers applique picture there. We've also got wedges, splash with a little ladybird in the middle, hearts with the lovebirds in the middle, swirl, medallion, blooms, trees, and houses. So there's a lot of different options, and each of those you can then incorporate an applique design in the middle. So I'll be showing you today how we actually use the template to create these wedges in our quilting. I'm going to start with showing you the basics pattern. Now you can buy the basics pattern for $7.70, and then you buy the template for $17.60, and those two together get you started on what you have to do. Each of the patterns that uses the Pick and Mix template has clear instructions again of how to use the template. However, the basics is a good start if you want to just have a go and figure out how it all works. Now, all of these are on the website under the Pick and Mix system collection, so if you wanted to jump on the website and have a look, you can. So for today, we're going to start with showing you how the basics work. So you'll start by cutting your strips of fabric to be depending on the end result. Now in this case we're trimming them at 4.5 inches. The ruler has sets of lines for a 4.5 inch block or a 6.5 inch, which would give you a 4 inch finished and a 6 inch finished. Now you can see here that there are also some solid lines and some dashed lines. Now they will depend on the block size that you want to end up with as to whether you're using those. Now the solid lines go with the 4.5 block, the dashed lines go with the 6.5. So what I'm going to be showing you today, we'll start with the 4.5. So what you'll do is you'll cut strips of fabric that are 4.5 inches wide. So we'll take our fabric, using our rotary cutter and regular ruler, we are going to cut those at 4.5 inches wide. So that's 4.5 this way. We're then going to cross cut those depending on what our finished result is going to be. So I have cross cut those at 5 inches high. So we've got our 4.5 wide and our 5 inches high. And so I've done a few pairs of those, as you can see. So with the ruler, you're going to end up with pairs of wedges either going with the angle this way or with the angle this way. And we talk about it going up or down. So depending on how you pair your fabrics when you cut them will depend on whether you've got up or down slopes based on your picture. And it's important to remember placement when doing that so you end up with the right directions. So if we want to cut a set with an up slope, it's important that we put our two matching pairs on top of each other the right way up, and that will then cut them the same. So I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, so we've got our template, we've got our 4.5 inch along here, and we're going to find this solid line that's a 5-inch. So I'm putting that solid 5-inch line on the bottom of my 5-inch piece. Then I'm going to cut along this line. Now what you'll also notice is the ruler, the template has on the end a little notch. It's got a little cutout. Now it's actually very important that we use that cutout because that helps us with our placement guide. So we're going to line that up and we're just going to cut that little notch off the end, and we're going to do the same to the other set. Line that up and cut that little notch off the end, and that gives us our pieces. Okay, so what you can see I've got here is I've got 2 sets of our front fabric and our background, and what you do then is when you then turn those around, you'll see that they are a matching pair. Okay, we're now going to stitch these together. So when you're stitching them together, this is where that little notch comes in handy, because you're going to line those up so that that notch that we cut out is lining up on the end of the other bit of fabric. So you can see that there. Okay, so we'll just come over here to the sewing machine and we'll stitch that. Okay, so you can see here, if I show you on this camera, there's that little notch, and that's lining up with that. So we're going to stitch all these with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now we've done that seam, we're going to press it open. We'll give it a press first. Press it open. So you can see there that because of that notching that we did at the start with the template, you have perfectly straight edges. And there's our straight line, our wedge line. So now we're going to sew the rest of these, and I'll show you what we can do with that. So let's first cut these last 2 pieces. So we'll pop it again at the 5. Now you can, once you've cut that line, you can double stack them like this to trim them at the same time, to trim that notch off. It's a little bit quicker. So we'll trim that notch off there. Okay, and then we'll take all of these over to the sewing machine and we're going to piece them. So again, matching that notch, you can see there and there. Now I like to chain piece, so as we do this, we'll actually chain piece these. The next one. The last one. Okay. So there are our pieces. So we'll trim those up and iron them all flat. so which way did I press the first one? Towards the koala. Okay. Okay, so there we have our 4 pieces, and now with that you'll start to see what we can do, and we can now arrange these in different ways. So we can place them like this and create a windmill shape. We could place them like this and create that sort of shape. We can also put them this way. So you can see that with lots of different directions of placement you can get different patterns. So what I'll show you now is if you were to, let's say, join all these together like that. Okay, so if we've got them this way around, what that gives us is this result. And so that pattern is in the basics book. If we were instead to arrange them in a different way, it's this one here. Now these ones are thinner blocks, but you can see with that one you end up with a border of thin wedges and an applique picture in the centre. Now so far we've only used what's called the down method, with the angle going up or down, so 2 ups or 2 downs. What happens if we incorporate ups and downs in our pattern, and what does that mean and how do we achieve that? And what we get is something like this, where you can see we've got 2 big ends together and 2 thin ends together. And that's all about how we cut it. So when we cut these the first time, we cut them both face up for the pair. What we're going to do now when we cut it is we're going to cut it with 1 up and 1 down. So face up and face down. So now I'm going to use this pair of pieces and I'm going to put one face down and the other face up on top. Now these are also 6.5 inch wide. So I'm going to do this using the 6.5 inch one, and I'm going to double stack and do a couple at a time. Again, now this is directional, this fabric, so that's something to remember is when you're doing it, which way do you want your fabric to go? So being aware of where you're cutting. Okay, so we're going to cut 2 sets here, and I've got them face up and face down. Okay, and you can see we're going to line that up with the 6.5 inch line over here, and we're going to cut that and cut the end off. Okay. And then when we open that out, we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what you can see is with your pair of the same colour, they won't actually go together. They're going opposite directions. So you've got a down and an up. Okay, so we'll stitch those together. Again, matching our points and a 1/4 inch seam. Match the points and sew it. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we'll bring these over to our ironing board. Give them a little press and press them open. So I'm going to have a little caught up there, that'll be right. And press this one open. And then you can see then that you can choose either to join them like this. And this is the block that forms the top of the houses pattern. So you can see here, it's got the two narrow wide blocks and that forms the house. Or if you were to join them like this, you can see that that is how we do build the tree blocks up. And it just varying amounts of thick and thin. So far all the blocks I've cut have had the same amount of fabric on this side as to on this side. So there are a few other combinations that you can do, many other combinations that you can do with just these simple blocks. However, once we actually start getting a bit more complicated, we can actually stitch these blocks together and then cross cut them again and end up with hearts, or again and end up with blooms. And this particular pattern even has a little peaky stem there, which is quite sweet. So that's blooms. So you can see the possibilities are endless with this pattern. There is so many different options of what you can do and arrangements you can end up with. You can see with the houses block here, also at the bottom it creates sort of a landscape. You've got trees on the side and you've got the houses. Now the houses are built with the wedges but also with just some straight blocks as well. The other thing you can do is the dragonflies. So you can see that's two sets essentially of what is like the tree block, one tree block and one tree block that are then joined together with a strip in the middle to create the dragonfly block. So I haven't got all of the ones here done, but you can see the sample there. So if you're looking at the patterns, after the basic patterns, the swirl's probably the next simplest, and that just continues with them all in the one direction around in a circle. So that was the dragonflies. Again, that's a fairly simple and easy block to do. The trees is the next one up, and that's, you can see the gorgeous little fox down the bottom. Now on my trees pattern, my lovely daughter has made me a little person that I then applique on. One of my favourites that I haven't done yet though is Splash. I love the little lady beetles. So those lady beetles are from the Bucket pattern, which is here. So this is Splash, and that tells you how to do the pattern for splash. So it's actually got some quarter square triangles as well as the template blocks. And then using the bucket pattern, which is a cushion pattern, you create the little mini appliques and you pop them in the quilt instead of making a cushion out of them. The trees pattern also now comes as a full set with the fox. So if you don't want to buy just the creative card of the tree pattern, you can actually get the pattern with the fox as well. So this is woofers. So they're the puppy dogs that are used in the dragonfly block. And she's just released a new pattern as well called frames. And this is a full pattern including the applique design. And you can see that she's used the same block pattern that is used for the top of the houses to create frames. So she's used the 6.5 and then again the 4.5 with the flower applique in the middle. So lots of different options there of what to do. The main thing to remember when you're doing the technique though is using that template, make sure you're cutting that little notch off the top. So it's very important that you're cutting that notch because that's what will help you match your blocks together. Also pay attention if you're going to be doing a pair of up and down, or if they all need to be going the same direction, either all up or all down with your angle, because that will depend how you place your fabric. If you want your blocks to all be the same way, your fabrics need to all be facing up the same way. If you are doing a matching pair of one up and one down, when you cut them, you need to cut them opposite, so wrong sides together or right sides together, and that will give you the one up and one down block. So I hope you've really enjoyed listening to my talk today. As I said, these are all available online on the website under the pick and mix system. So beautiful patterns by Turpin Designs, and thanks for joining in.